darker than usual today, and weird things are slowly happening on the boat. The passengers from the steamboat ferry are disappearing, one by one. First, it was that exhausted-looking man from the onboard band. The only trace left of him, his trombone, laying ominously on the ground where you saw him standing less than 5 minutes ago. Then it was that snotty young pocket thief near the bow. He was standing in a crowd, and nobody saw what happened to him. But that's not the strangest part. It's Mike, your coworker. His face is not the same as it used to be. The remaining passengers are starting to realize something is wrong. Several of them have nervously told you about the strange screams they periodically hear coming from the bowels of the ship. One of them even claims they saw something crawl onto the ship. You believed it was group paranoia at first, until you heard one of the screams for yourself. And the ship didn't stop at the last port. The sun will be setting soon, and your mind starts to linger on the horrific stories you remember crying yourself to sleep to as a child. Stories about the Mudmyth Sound. Picture this, fellas. On one fateful night, I was sitting on the couch, rewatching my own video like a narcissist, deep yoga breathing their own farts, and as I got to the end of the video, I noticed something. If this video does really well, I might think about adding new monsters to the game, but if not, I'll probably just let this game rot in peace. If this video does really well, I might think about adding new monsters to the game. If this video does really well, I might think about adding new monsters to the game. If this video does really well, if this video does really well, if this video does really well, gulp. I realize most of you have no clue what's going on, so let me back up. If you haven't seen the first video I made about this game, I made a horror game based on the 1928 Steamboat Willie animation by the Walter White Disney Corporation. The game is about Mickey, running around, fixing breaches on the steamboat. His head gets clapped by a caterpillar thing, living in a pile of poop in the hull of the ship, which is why Mickey's got that goofy goober look in him. Then he does a bunch of side quests for the rest of the furries on board, buys some questionable products, certainly doesn't inject anything. And then when the sun goes down and the ship gets dark, he fights for his life against 4 hostile creatures. We've got the arm, the dog, the eater, and the mannequin. There's obviously more to it than that, and we'll talk about it as we go, but if you want more details on any of that, here's a link to that video. And if you want to try playing the game in its original form, there's a link to play it in the description. Now, I can't speak for all game developers out there, but there's a phenomenon that I frequently experience while I'm out there pretending to make games. A phenomenon that I feel gets summed up very well in this sentence. I finished a project, never mind, it's unplayable trash. Or, as I like to sum it up, I fap nut. Essentially, by the time a game is finished and ready to publish, I hate looking at it so much that I'm ready to smother it back into sweet, sweet non-existence. This Mickey Mouse game was certainly no exception, and for a very long time I had no interest in updating or even touching the game. But thinking about it after a couple of days, I decided I would crack open the code and try to do something about this rash-inducing dingleberry of the game. And here we are. So let's update this puppy sucker. In the video I made previously about the game, I showed off this mini-game where the player is able to steer the ship up the river and collect booty while dodging logs. But back then, I decided to remove it because I think I was having issues with the mixing 3D gameplay into a 2D game. But Pasluke is a bit of an idiot, so I'm not too surprised that he was struggling. I heard that he was dropped as a child. Repeatedly. I did it! Intentionally. So the steering minigame is back in the game now. The way you get into this minigame is you need to jump up here at the helm when Captain Peter Meatbeater isn't standing in the way. To keep in line with the horror theme, I added a little jump scare that can happen in this steering minigame. All that happens is that this picture of the dog pulling himself over the edge of the window quickly pops up, and after a good scream, the game boots you out of the steering minigame. It's a pretty cheap jump scare, I'm willing to admit it. Another thing that existed in the original game, but then was cut out and then added back in for this update, is a new item. Check this out, you get the item and you press this little button right here and wow. Alright, you fellas know I have a habit of accidentally making things look like particular body parts, like what happened back in this video about one of my other horror games. Promise you guys I had no intention of making this sack-like thing look like that. I'm fully aware of what it looks like, but I'm too proud to change it. It's my sack. What this thing does is pretty cool. It acts like a teleporter for Goober Mickey to jump from scene to scene with. Although it does have a lengthy cooldown after use, those of you who have played the game can understand how this could be very useful. First half of this game is spent in the daylight and there's not really any dangers during this time, but halfway through the game the sun goes down and the monsters come out. In the thick of it, when the monsters are all over the place, being able to jump into my sack here and bypass all of them is very useful. There's also another item you can get that allows you to brighten up the dark parts of the game for a period of time, but how and where you get these two items is a secret. Actually, there's a lot of secrets I've added to the game, like how you get to this part of the ship, and like how did your mama fit in them jeans. One thing that isn't super secretive is this handsome new NPC I added, who you can find in various locations on the first couple of levels in the game. In the game, game, the player builds up money with every breach they repair, and they can spend that money at the kitchen shop with Smackers, the parrot here.
Serious crap!
Upgrading things like how quickly you can repair a breach, your running speed, how bright your lantern is. But now there are 2 shops in the game. This new mole guy is the second shopkeeper, for the cursed item shop, where the player can buy items that have debatably useful attributes at a very cheap price. But let's just say you don't pay with money. There's 6 cursed items you can buy from this guy. The shop will cycle through the items, showing only 2 random items at a time, and we're going to look at all of them. First cursed item, the overused lantern wick. The overused lantern wick is an item that makes your lantern light much bigger and brighter than any of the lanterns you can buy at the regular overpriced shop, but the light will burn out after only a couple seconds of use. Second cursed item is the slippery pants. I got the idea from this cursed item from seeing people play the game and comment on how fast Mickey would zip around with the highest level of speed upgrades. Knowing how extra speed can actually be detrimental to the player, you can probably see where things are going with this cursed item. I nerfed the regular speed upgrades a bit, and then created these slippery pants that now make the player run faster than ever before. But that's not enough. I made it so when entering into the next scene with the slippery pants, there's a 50-50 chance that they will make you slide way into the scene, making jumping into the sweet embrace of the monster even easier. Third cursed item, the Metamorphosis Effigy, where if you purchase it and afterwards lose your final heart to a monster, the game will bring you back to life for a final chance at survival. The downside is that the rest of the game will be spent with flies covering the screen. This was done with a particle effect in my engine of choice, Godot, and I was actually thinking of making a tutorial on how I did it because I haven't really seen anything like this covered online, but maybe there's a reason for that. The fourth cursed item, the Primordial Tar. After purchasing this item, the cost for pumping the repair pump that keeps the ship from sinking triples, but the ship only loses integrity during the daylit portions of the game, which is the first half where there are no monsters chasing you around. In hardcore mode, not only does the player only have 1 life, but this bar drops really fast, so the player needs to be continuously filling it back up, otherwise the ship will sink. This quickly dropping ship integrity is part of the reason why I think hardcore mode in this game might be impossible, but I think this cursed item helps fix that. The fifth cursed item is the Sho Sugiban. There is a non-zero chance that a portion of you watching this just shuddered with a mix of irritation and hatred after hearing me say those words, and not just because I am mispronouncing it. Sho Sugiban is an ancient and traditional Japanese technique of lightly charring a wooden surface in order to preserve and finish it. Is what I would say if I were an illiterate basement dweller, but I am not. I am a noble weeb basement dweller. The term Sho Sugiban is actually a misreading of the word yaksugi, which is the actual Japanese name of this wood finishing technique. According to this passive-aggressive Reddit post, someone who didn't know what they were doing read the first and last kanji characters of this word incorrectly, and then spread their filthy misinformation out to the Western world in the form of Sho Sugiban.
You suck!
I sat for about 10 minutes while writing this script trying to figure out why I was calling it Sho Sugiban instead of Yakasugi when I already knew that Yakasugi was the right name, but I couldn't come up with a decent answer. The Sho Sugiban is so fast that it basically fixes breaches instantly, faster than any of the other hammer upgrades. At first when I made this curse item, the downside was pretty simple. The Sho Sugiban mallet has no effect on the mannequin monster and won't be able to break her or deal any damage to her at all. I'll explain a bit more about the mannequin monster and why that's significant, but the important part is that when you have this cursed mallet, if you encounter the mannequin, it's basically a guaranteed death. Which is what I thought until a playtester proved me wrong by somehow avoiding getting caught by a pursuing mannequin while having the Sho Sugiban item. So I decided to add another layer of dubiousness to it. Now, not only will the Sho Sugiban mallet not have any effect on the mannequin monster, but every once in a while, after fixing a breach, the mallet will nope itself out of your hands like a bar of soap in the prison showers, and you won't be able to hammer anything until you get it back. I like to imagine it's possessed by the ghost of that Redditor that is still really angry about the word Sho Sugiban. The player will always be able to find the mallet again here by the helm, each time after it joins the Summer Olympics. By the way, if playtesting one of my games before I release it sounds like a spanking good time to you, then join my Discord. There's a link in the chat in the... The sixth cursed item you can buy in the shop is the rose-colored glasses. This used to be a much more cursed item, where buying it will put a colored filter over the entire screen you just had to regretfully learn to live with for the rest of the game. Because of this, I made it so you can toggle the glasses on and off, which really makes them more of a novelty than a curse. I was thinking that being able to toggle it like this might lead to some interesting opportunities for puzzles in the dark part of the game, like a spirit that can only be seen when wearing the glasses, or footprints that you need to follow that glow when looking through the colored glasses. If that just sparks some ideas ideas for you on how these glasses could be used, let me know. I've thought about adding other cursed items to Al's curse shop here, but it's not going to take priority since they are all minor optional additions to the game and honestly pretty unbearable to play with. Now let's talk about the monsters. I'll give a quick recap on the 4 monsters that are already in the game in the order that the player is most likely to encounter them. First, there's the arm. It's an elongated arm that ominously hangs down from the top of the screen. When you enter a scene with the arm in it, it will quickly move to hover over the player and remain hovering over you for the entire time you are in that scene. If you jump while the arm is above you or stand still for too long, it will quickly reach down and kill you. This is probably the most forgettable monster of the group, as I myself forgot about it when first writing the script to this video. The second monster is the dog, or what I originally called the Screamer. This is the same guy we saw in that jump scare a little while ago. This monster has a starvingly thin body with shrunken pits for eyes and a gaping mouth, with a lower lip that sags below the jaw. I called him the Screamer because of the sound that he makes. But somewhere along the way, people started calling him the dog, and I like that because, let's be real, they all scream. When you enter into a scene with the dog quickly crawls towards you and is only stopped by you shining the light of your lantern on him. Another one of his gimmicks is if you leave the scene you encounter him on, he will move to somewhere else on the boat, making it seem like there are more of him than there actually are. The third monster is the Eater, who's not to be confused with this Chet. When you enter a scene with the Eater, he will slowly lumber back and forth across the scene, making moaning sounds. The Eater is pretty unique in that he will not kill the player if the player touches him unless the player is moving while it happens. So if the player holds still while the Eater passes by, the player will go undetected. That's not all though, the Eater will also be triggered and will quickly charge at the player if it hears the prolonged sound of hammering. The fourth and final monster is the Mannequin, and she is the least common to encounter. She is an armless and headless mannequin wearing a soiled wedding gown and a floor chaplet with a face veil. Unlike the other monsters, the Mannequin has the ability to continue chasing you beyond the initial scene where you encounter her, and she will only stop chasing if she catches and kills you or if you shatter her with a hammer. I said there are only 4 monsters in the original game, but actually there's technically 5 monsters. The 5th monster is you, the player. If you play through the tutorial, you see that the player starts out as a pretty regular looking, beloved Disney character, before changing to having this derpy butternut squash face. This is the player before they are a monster. What happens in the tutorial is that the player goes down into the hull of the boat and gets caught by the caterpillar monster, a long 8-armed monster that quickly squirms after you. Once you get caught, you get spanked, and the rest of the game is played with the player having the body of Mickey and the face of the caterpillar, implying that after the tutorial, the player is now most likely controlling the caterpillar instead of Mickey. Those are all the original monsters, and since working on updating this game, I have added 3 monsters, bringing the total monster count up to a whopping 8. Let's take a look at that first monster now. Speaking of monsters, don't you think that YouTube is kind of monstrously horrible at notifying you about when your favorite YouTuber posts a new video? Yeah! That transition was the real monster. No, you're the real monster, for sticking it out this far in the video. If you become a free member of my Patreon, you will be notified by email every time I post a video. You can also get some little hints about what I'm working on during those long, cold months while you're waiting for me to post again.
Oh my, it's another Luke post. Oh, that naughty boy.
Because my index finger has arthritis from shooting down all the offers I get to sponsor AI companies, I want to thank my supporters on Patreon, Ko-fi, and my channel members for sponsoring this video. You guys don't realize how much you keep me going forward. Thank you. If you are interested in joining my Patreon, either for free to receive project hints and notifications when I post a video, or as a supporter, there's a link to it in the description of this video. Let's get back to talking about the monsters I added to the game. If you saw the first video, you might recognize this first monster. It's that squat thing that I initially designed to be the monster that kills you in the tutorial. It was replaced by the caterpillar monster I mentioned a little while ago. I scrapped this guy because I didn't really like his design and the position as an introductory monster, and I really like the design and story implications of having the caterpillar as the monster that ends the tutorial. Since that video, I've received several comments wishing that they could have this little guy back in the game, so here he is. This monster has a demon goat-like look with a very animal-looking skull for for a head, and shorter arms with hooves instead of hands. His torso is very broad and human-looking, and the lower half of his body seems to be ripped away and rotting. This little guy is probably the least threatening monster you can encounter in the game. There's even a chance you won't ever encounter him because the only way that he will appear is if you go without having your lantern on for an extended period of time. After a while of walking around in the darkness, he will appear and crawl towards the player. If the player notices him in the darkness in time, they will pretty easily be able to jump over him as he crawls past. This is what the description of him says in the game's monster book. This one's entire body seems partially decomposed, and is missing the lower half of its body due to rot. I might be able to jump over it as it crawls towards me.
He doesn't really have a name yet though. I've been bouncing between calling him the Crawler, the Ankle Biter, the Dark Monster, and Good Boy. And here's what it looks like when he catches and kills the player. It's a bit anticlimactic and almost sexy? Like vampire sexy?
The second new monster is the bird. When I was thinking of new monsters I could add, conceptually I wanted a monster that would utilize the ceiling, since all the monsters except for the arm attack the player from the ground. I came up with a design for the bird actually not long after the first video came out. I thought it would be really cool to have a Pinocchio-like character fly around on its strings, acting like a bird, with its long nose like a beak and flapping its wooden arms as if they were wings. I decided to give it bird legs sprouting from its torso, with the talons ripping out through these old leather boots.
I also added some soiling to the guy's nose because Pinocchio from the Disney movie is an annoying brown noser.
My original idea is that I could have a monster that would swoop down from the ceiling in a predictable parabola shape, forcing the player to do a quick jump rope-like hop over it. This eventually faded into the monster just flying down to a predicted position, where the player will likely run into it if they aren't paying attention and they just keep on running forward. If the player successfully dodges it, the bird will flap around on the ground harmlessly, then go limp as it is dragged back up out of view of the player. This monster is not very dangerous and pretty easy to avoid, so it's usually discovered pretty early on in the night, but I like how, unlike the other monsters, it usually only pops up when the player already feels safe in a scene, and it adds another layer of stress as the player is running around. Here's what the monster book says about the bird. This one makes a sound right before it swoops down, which makes for a good alarm. If I listen out for it, I should be able to dodge it, as it also seems to follow a predictable path as it flies. It's inanimate, but not only that, I think it's being controlled remotely. How this is possible, I have no idea. It also seems to be a sort of half-biological puppet. It's hanging from strings, but what are the strings attached to?
Here's what it looks like when the bird catches the player. Yeah, that's how Mickey likes it.
All the monsters are pretty unique from each other, but this final monster stands out from the rest as being a monster that can never actually kill you itself, but might actually be the most dangerous monster in the entire game. This is the Lord. It's a wrapped up mummified body that looks human except for the head, which has a bit of a Goofy movie character look to it. With small floppy ears and a small snout underneath the bandages. The Lord only shows up in the later levels and starts off completely invisible to the player. The Lord sets up a trap on the scene, and once the player walks into the trap, the Lord will become visible and instantly wrap the player in thick thorned vines that keep the player from moving. When this happens, the Lord screams and summons a dog that you will have to stop with the lantern light before it gets you. The only way to escape from the Lord's vine trap is by spamming the left and right keys, gradually causing the vines to break one by one. While you're doing this, the Lord snaps into contorted positions with each button press and twitches its head like it's possessed when you hold still. What makes the Lord so dangerous is the potential scenarios it could lead to. Although the Lord does summon a dog to come and attack you, there is a risk that you could be trapped by the Lord while there is another monster on the scene, which the Lord would prevent you from escaping. Imagine running from the chasing mannequin and stumbling into a Lord trap. That's GG's for you, little chode. This is what the book has to say about this monster. A Lord. They sent a Lord. Mending with a dead body is not the most difficult task, but the lords are still highly ranked in the tower, and they sent one after me. I'm able to break free of its bindings if I struggle enough. It is imperative that I survive this trip, and they are desperate to stop me.
And that's it for monsters in the game. Hey, I see you checking the time on the screen. We're not done yet. Because I'm a masochist psychopath, there's a whole different part of the game that isn't even on a boat, and there's fishing. Forget Steamboat Willie, it's a fishing horror game now. That's right, fellas. Mickey Mouse... dang it. That is actually no joke, it's in there. You gotta find it, I'm not gonna tell you where it is. Also, I lied to you. There's one more monster that I wanted to have a little discussion with you about. What if I told you there might be a boss battle?
I realize that might sound like something that wouldn't really fit into a game like this, but trust me, I've got a plan. I have a design for a final boss fight, although I'm not sure I'm going to be keeping him, and I would actually appreciate your opinion on whether or not I should use this monster as a boss or scrap it for something else. I came up with this tall, clockwork-like puppet monster that would loom over the player and slowly chase them around. A big inspiration for this was this meme of Woody from Toy Story, reassembled as a head on his leg, with his face looking like he's totally doped out of his mind. I think another inspiration might have been those cool, tall-looking monsters you find in the game Crow Country. But going back to the boss monster, it has a torso with legs that move on a hinge, and rotating turnstile-like bars emerging from its shoulders, where its arms should be. On top of its long, thin neck is 4 heads, each of them turned to look in a different direction.
I've been calling this monster the Strawman because some of his extremities kind of look like straws to me as I was drawing him.
Another big part of his design came from a game design perspective. See, because there are essentially 2 main game mechanics throughout the scary parts of the game. 1, fixing the breaches with the hammer, and 2, trying to avoid the monsters. It would be important that a boss battle relied on the same mechanics and gameplay, but with some kind of twist so that it can still be significant and distinguishable from the rest of the game. So to keep in line with this, I kept my thoughts on creating a boss monster that was modular. The idea being that it would have body parts that could separate from the Strawman and act as either the breaches that needed to be hammered back down, or the monsters that the player needs to avoid. So the parts that would act as the breaches that need to be repaired by the player's hammer, my original thought was that it could be the Strawman's arms sticking out from holes, and the player would have to hammer them back down. Maybe they could even reach out and try to attack you as you do it. As for the parts that would need to fill in the spots of the monsters during the boss battle, my idea was that they could be the independent heads, or possibly more arms or even legs, all of them doing something different when the player enters a scene with them. As you can see from his design, the Strawman's head twists around, revealing 4 different faces: the happy face, the angry face, the broken face, and the blindfolded face. I came up with ideas on what each of these faces would do when the player encounters them individually, like chasing the player if their lantern was lit, or listening for the sound of the hammer. But the only idea I really liked was for the broken face, which would sprout spider legs and quickly scurry after the player. I might do some redesigning to make it more creepy. If you have any ideas for this, please let me know.
Then after you fixed all the breached parts of the boss battle, he would reassemble and you'd have to take him down as his completed self.
Again, I like the modular part of the Strawman as a final boss, but I'm not completely sold on his design, and if you have any inspiration for me or ways that he could be more creepy or interesting, please tell me. I might actually do it. To be clear, this updated version isn't public to play yet, unfortunately. I'd like to complete it first before I do that. If you're interested in playing the original, there's a link to it in the description of this video. If you thought any of this was interesting, subscribe, and go check out some of my other videos about other projects I'm working on.
Thank you for subscribing, and a huge thank you goes to my supporters. Now we're gonna watch them die.
Stefan, HMS Erebus, Pro Voice Actor 1,
Panchito,
One Man Army, Figaro, Sly, Jan, Vervain, Betsy Urena, Jarrett, Mackenzie, Rhythm Song, Fireblade, and the Hamburglar. Thank you guys so much for your support.
and to you who watched this far in the video, you know I love you.
I've seen some comments about how these monsters could represent the 7 deadly sins. We got the eater, who would be gluttony. The dog, I think probably wrath. The arm would work really well as greed. I think it's pretty easy to say that the mannequin would be lust, but I actually think that she would fit better in envy, or maybe pride.
No, lust has got to go to Pinocchio. Or the ankle biter.
But there's 8 monsters, so I guess that doesn't really work for 7 sins. I don't know, I'm gonna let you conspiracy theorists figure it out.